Sir, after being convicted of sex trafficking, today is the day that Sean Diddy Combs will learn his fate. His sentencing hearing happens in New York about 90 minutes from now, actually. We are joined this morning by attorney Tamara Walker for a look at the possible outcomes here. Tamara, good morning. Thank you for being here. Appreciate your time. Okay, so run us through some of the possibilities here.
Well, first of all, let me start off by saying that Diddy dodged a major bullet here, and I meant the alliteration. So what I mean when I say that is he was looking at sentences that would have had him in prison for most of his life. So now, operating from that framework, anything that happens here is going to be a major victory from what he could have had. So what prosecutors are looking for is a little bit over 11 years. What his defense attorneys are looking for is something that would have him home very soon. They're looking for about 14 months. I think the judge is probably going to split the difference in there somewhere.
Okay. I understand. I was kind of reading up on the latest here, and that he wrote this letter. You know, he expressed his remorse over this, saying, I believe his phrasing was, "I'm humbled and I've been broken by this." What's the strategy there?
Well, what happens is this. The prosecution gets to submit a package to the judge, as well as the defense. So that was part of the package. It's called a mitigation package. You also have another voice in the room, which is the probation department. So what they do is interview people that are close to the case, interview people from the defendant's life, and they make a recommendation as well. In this case, their recommendations for a little bit over 7 years. So you've got 14 months from the defense, you've got a little bit over 11 years from the prosecution, and you've got kind of in the middle from the probation department. The judge has been known to depart from what prosecutors want, and they rely heavily, typically, on the probation report. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
And that probation report recommended 7 years.
A little bit over, I think it was 7 years, 3 months.
Does his celebrity or wealth play into the judge's decision here? You know, you mentioned some of the aggravating factors here, and would there be a mitigating factor with regard to his wealth?
So that's a very interesting question. I don't know that it should come down to wealth. However, it's difficult to separate out people, you know? I mean, people have their emotions, they bring things to the case. Obviously, the judge is supposed to set those things aside. Here's the thing, too. The Supreme Court is firmly in place for Diddy. Here's why. You're not supposed to take into account the factors that he was acquitted on. So the accounts, the RICO, that he was acquitted on, the judge cannot look at those. From what the Supreme Court has said, that's another major victory for Diddy.
What about the setting an example factor? Is that something that the judge is expected to take into consider just because he's such a public person?
Absolutely. This case was so wild. I don't know that anyone else can come along who's going to follow that framework. But I definitely think the violence aspect, the judge has mentioned that he's troubled by the violence. You also have the precedent that the defense team came to the judge asking for the convictions to be overturned. That was denied, as well as their request for bail. So you have to look at all those factors as well.
We understand that Combs is expected to speak at the sentencing here. At least that's what I read. What do you make of that? A good idea, bad idea?
That's a tricky territory. Obviously, I would imagine the defense team has prepped their client very well. But, you know, sometimes emotions come out. And people are not used to being in those scenarios. So you just have to make sure that you don't do any damage. I think with a personality like Combs, though, it could be perceived as either acting or real. That's going to be the question.
Right. Okay. Before we get to the sentencing, I guess it's at 10 o'clock New York time, which is about 90 minutes from right now. How would you rate the jobs done by both the defense and the prosecution in this case?
Listen, anything from 4 years, 6 years under, the defense team has done a phenomenal job. Obviously, the prosecution had a very difficult hill to climb with the RICO. So we have to put that to the side. The judge can't consider that. Now we're looking at the prostitution counts. Obviously, it's a federal law that he's being convicted under. So with that, you're looking at serious charges still, but nowhere near what he was looking at. I think if he ends up anything 6 years and under, job well done for the defense team. And he's still a relatively young man when he gets out.
That's right. All right, Tamara Walker, thank you so much for the perspective this morning. Really appreciate your time.